The world has become more interconnected than ever, which means that the need for robust cybersecurity solutions is paramount. As the cybersecurity horizon expands and evolves, companies are stepping up to safeguard their digital assets. CDNetworks, a prominent player in this domain, has not only risen to the challenge but has made substantial investments and expanded its presence in Southeast Asia. To discuss these intriguing developments and unravel the world of cybersecurity in this region, we are joined today by Yien Wu, Head of Sales for SSEA and ANZ at CDNetworks, who brings a wealth of expertise and insight into the growing security challenges in Southeast Asia. Hello Yien, thank you for joining us today for this interview. Let's get started with the first question. As CDNetworks expands into high-growth markets such as Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, and India, how do you plan to address the unique challenges these emerging markets may face in dealing with cybersecurity risks?
Okay, so there are three key aspects when you're addressing these challenges in markets like ASEAN. So first is the localized expertise and partnerships. So you want to make sure you have a localized team to support in local languages and understand the local culture of doing business. And you also need to have the partnership with local SIs and resellers to make sure that with the relationship, you'll be able to translate your technology better into their existing workflow and tech stack. The second part is the tailored solution in terms of security. So in every country, they have a different requirements, whether it's from government regulations or just the business practices in the market. You have to understand the differences between, in Indonesia or Vietnam and Thailand, they all do things differently. So you gotta make sure you tailor your security solutions to the local customers. And also you will need to make sure that your security solutions are keeping up with the trend of the local markets. And again, it's coming from the governments or coming from the business community. You really have to keep yourself aware of all these updates. The third is the user education and infrastructure. So right now, many industries in the emerging markets like the ASEAN markets are not so, I would say, aware of the cyber risk. For example, in the manufacturing industries, oftentimes they don't think it is important to protect their websites because they don't actually sell anything on their website. But that become a loophole for the hackers to actually infiltrate into their systems and cause huge loss for their business. Okay, so I think again, localized expertise, tailored security solution, and also the user education.
Thank you, Yien. Sounds like it's crucial for today's organizations to make the right investment to ensure they won't become the next victim of cybercrime. In your opinion, do you think all industries understand their exposures and the criticality of cybersecurity investment? If not, how do you, as a salesperson, educate or advise your clients on making a cybersecurity investment?
Well, I think not all industries fully understand the cybersecurity risk they're facing, and thus they don't really know how much to invest and where to invest. Right. So for industries like e-commerce or media industries, those are the industries that typically understand more about the internet, what the risks come along with having a website or an app. But for more legacy companies, enterprises, I do not think they fully understand, just because traditionally the risks are not evolving as fast as today's attacks. Right? So the first thing I think is the communication. Sometimes when you articulate the threats and vulnerabilities in the technical terms, it's really hard for the business leaders to understand, how that would impact their businesses and what they actually mean. Right, so you have to be able to communicate in the business terms, make them understand how these risks would translate into the actual business loss. And also you have to use actual case studies, how you have been helping other clients to mitigate such risk as a reference so they can better understand. And the second would be the business continuity. So any downtime or data breaches actually disrupt your business flow, disrupt your day-to-day business operations, right? And there is a saying that cybersecurity investments are like your investment in a very good car brake. So with a good brake, you'll be able to go faster. You know, not the fact that it can slow you down so that you can get safer. No, it actually empowers you to go faster. And that is the right mindset we always try to communicate with business leaders, is that if you have a good brakes, you can go faster. If you have a good cybersecurity investment, your business can grow much faster and much more robust. Right, so that's the business continuity part. And finally, I think it's the reputation protection. So nowadays, any businesses facing cyber attacks would cause a strong reputation damage and the customer trust. So these aspects are harder to quantify, but you know, once it happens, the business would really feel the damage to the brand, to their customer trust, and usually that is something that can make the business leader be more alerted of any kind of cyber attack. So really the goal is to bridge this gap between different industries' levels of understanding, and also make sure that the language you use are the business terms, and from analyzing the cyber risk from the business perspective, so the leaders can fully understand.
Thank you, Yien. You just highlighted the crucial role of effective communication in enabling business leaders to grasp the significance of their cybersecurity investments and gaining exposure. However, it's evident that effective communication needs to permeate every level of an organization. So, what is your advice for overcoming the challenges of communicating these cyber risks and the need for better communication between technical and business leaders?
Yeah, so I think it resonates with the previous question. The first thing is, of course, between the technical leaders and the business leaders, all the gap lies into the technical jargons and the understanding of the technology itself. Cyber security is a very deep domain. It has many different aspects, different depth of how deep you can go into protecting your assets, and these things are not really commonly known to the public and to the business leaders, right? So how do you actually make sure these very complicated technical terms can be understood in the business world is the first thing you got to do. And secondly, you have to understand how and what the business leader thinks. So what do they care about? What actually impact their own objectives? After understanding that, for example, revenue, reputation, many aspects from the business part, if you understand that, then you can actually connect the link between the cyber risk and their objectives. So that's the first thing you got to do. Second is to contextualize the risk. So oftentimes we talk about, you have the bot attacks, this type of attack, that type of attack, and yet we really lack the context of such attacks, right? So every industry has different kind of traffic patterns they're seeing, and you cannot use the same kind of preset of protection or the risk analysis from the airline industries and put it on top of the e-commerce industry. It's completely different, right? So you have to understand what industry you're looking at and the type of traffic pattern they're seeing, the region they're seeing, what type of attacks are more common in the region. All those things actually contribute to a better communication between the technical and business leaders. And then I think it's the shared objectives. So the technical leaders and the business leaders actually share the same objective, which is to make the company more secure and grow faster, right? But how do you actually, in the detail level, how do you actually align the goals in terms of KPI, in terms of maybe OKR or any kind of objective setting framework? You really need to align those objectives in detail, and also need to emphasize how different objectives actually can work together in the real world. Okay. Finally, I think it's the culture. So a lot of enterprises, a lot of organizations do not have the culture of transparent communication. In emerging markets specifically, it's a very traditional business culture where hierarchy is very important when you communicate with your managers. When you communicate across departments, there are boundaries that you should not step across, right? And those are oftentimes the culture that actually promote the cyber risk, because different departments used to have different standards and they do not communicate well with each other. That's where the hackers can actually infiltrate and come in and do the lateral movements across your organizations, right? So the culture of transparent communication is really the key to make sure that all departments understand each other and protect the environment altogether.
That was very insightful, Yin. Thank you. I have just one last question before we end the session. As the cybersecurity landscape continues to evolve at a rapid pace, it becomes increasingly vital for us to learn from real-world successes. With your experience in the high-tech industry across different regions, could you provide some examples of successful approaches or strategies that have been employed to combat cyber attacks for enterprise customers?
Sure. So across different regions, the strategies to combat cyber attacks share some commonalities due to the global nature of these challenges, but I would say it's still pretty regional. The attacks you see in Europe, America, and in Southeast Asia are quite different, let alone in India or China, kind of big countries. But some strategy I think can be implemented across regions are, first thing is the multi-layer security. As I said before, security is a very deep and complex domain. So a combination of security measures from the layer 3, 4, and 7, for example, your firewalls, intrusion detection, bot management, behavioral analytics, all these security mitigation measurements are very important to make sure that you cover your web assets and your infrastructure from different angles. And then you also need to use some concept like network segmentation to isolate your critical systems from affecting each other due to any attack. And second thing would be the zero trust architecture. The zero trust architecture is the most trending security solution in the market, the industry right now, based on our observation. So businesses are slowly understanding the shortcomings of using VPN, and to switch to a zero trust architecture, basically you get rid of the perimeter-based security. You kind of verifies every user and devices before granting any access, and you do every kind of more detailed tracking of the visitors coming in. This kind of prevents the lateral movements where the traditional VPN allows you to come in and they can access all kinds of your internal resources. And secondly, it's more mobile friendly. So zero trust architecture would be a very critical solution for post-pandemic business world where your employees will work anywhere in the world, and you really need such solutions to safeguard your assets and also allow a better user experience. The number 3, I think, is the vulnerability management. So you have to scan your assets more frequently and regularly, and really develop the framework of how you want to analyze your vulnerabilities. For vulnerability scannings, oftentimes it is the framework and the objective that define what type of vulnerabilities we actually find. So if you have two different engineering teams, security engineering team, scanning the same web assets with a different framework and objective, you will find different results. So there is a human biases in any kind of such testing, right? And so you have to keep optimizing your framework and objectives regularly so that you make sure you don't leave any loopholes behind. Okay, and also you need to use more diverse tools to actually assess the same issue. So different vendors, different tools all offer different advantages and disadvantages. And in order to make sure you cover all the angles, you really need to be more diverse in your vendor management, in your solution sourcing. And finally is the, last but not least, the employee training and awareness. So this is probably the most ignored part, in my opinion, in many enterprises, because employee training and awareness takes a lot of time. It takes time, and also it takes day-to-day efforts to really make sure that all your actions, when you're doing any work, follows the guideline of your internal security policy. And it's a very hard thing to do when you have thousands of employees. How do you actually make sure they follow the security guidelines and not fall into the trap of any phishing or any type of online attack? Okay, so these kind of employee training awareness takes time and takes really deep investment in sourcing perhaps the third-party consultant to really develop the training frameworks and keep optimizing, keep refreshing these kind of security guidelines every quarter or every biannually, to make sure that employees can follow the guidelines, and also to make sure that the employee's user experience, the experience itself, is not so difficult, so that they overlook certain aspect of your policies. Okay, so I think overall it is important to understand cybersecurity is a vast and dynamic domain, and different kind of strategies across different regions all exist as our choices. But really the key is to understand the context, which region, which country you're in, which industry, what type of business you're operating in, and those aspects would make sure that you develop a security strategies that is tailored to yourself, to your clients, and not just some preset that fits the industry. That is very important.
All right, thank you, Yien, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. We hope this has been quite insightful, especially for organizations in the region in the ongoing battle against the ever-evolving cyber threat.